of God surround us. Let our joy be so triumphant that we rest in God and say Amen. Blessed always, for the arms of God surround us. Let our joy be so triumphant that we rest in God and say Amen. We have one more. Let our joy be so ending, triumphant, that we rest in God and say Amen. Thank you. Thank you. Beautiful.
I'm on. She's looking down. So it's great to be with everyone on this Mother's Day, and I wanted to just share a little story because I'm going to invite my partner, Roy Dean Doughty, up in a minute to read a poem. And he recently published a book of poetry called Clutter. It's a poetic exploration of language, consciousness, and time. And a friend of ours had bought the book, and she texted me and she said, I've ordered the book, but I don't have it yet. And I sent her a message back and I said, well, you know, this could be really wonderful for you because the book was written, Roy's written a poem every day for many, many years, many, like 30, 40 years. And the actual book of poetry was written one poem a day from the fall of 2015 to December, into December of 2016. So I said to my friend Suzanne, I said, you know, you could just pick a date, like a special date, and just look in the book for that date. So she got the book, and she texted me the next day, and she said, I picked my birthday. It was August 11th. And it was so powerful because the poem was about mother. And it brought to me the awareness of the fact that I have not yet forgiven my mother, who long ago passed. And it reminded me of how powerful it is and how poetry can be such a way to take us into a deeper place in our lives. And when I had Unity of Berkeley, Roy would read a poem every single Sunday. So I asked him to come this Sunday. I don't think he's going to come every Sunday because he's not the early bird, I am. And we live in Marin. But I think it's going to be a real blessing for all of you to have him share one of his poems from this new book. So Roy, I want to invite you to come up. And you'll hear the poem, and this is his mom, if you want to know a little bit more about it. There's a picture of Hazel there. So.
In the beginning was her word. On the wall of a room I use for sleeping and meditation is a photo of my mother on her wedding day. She is just out of her teens and has already lived through one worldwide depression and one world war. And her eyes, which are magnified in the glass of round wire spectacles, which I always thought were as much a part of her features as her mouth or skin, are vivacious with fear. The legendary sum of all her hauntings still live in those eyes. They follow me always. Fear, but not just fear. Life in the Spirit's dimensions. You will read these words, and with a spectacular transference of meaning, will think of your own mother and how her eyes follow you. And you will miss the point of this utterance. No, no. These eyes and the ghosts of their vivacious fear, in need of their fragile prostheses to see her duty, can only be meant for the son who reads their love. This mystery is only pierced when one transcends the realm of identity. The phrases your mother, my mother, the blinding pronoun I, are first and finally the hauntings of the Spirit. That she of living terror who protects and who tames life's calamities through simple domestic acts. She feeds. She heals the sick. She cleans the dirty. And the sum of her scolding is creation's speech.
Cut that mic. It's drooping. Hello, I don't know. Help. This is a special day for microphones. We are family. Yeah. Whoa, okay. So, thank you so much, Roy. I just like, yeah. So this month, I have a focus on divine guidance. And last Sunday we had a labyrinth here. It was really fun to be able to stand on the labyrinth. And my focus last Sunday was on where you stand is sacred. We were focusing on allowing and aligning ourselves to be able to be in a receptive mode to receive guidance, to receive divine guidance. So this Sunday, we're moving into a deeper level of really understanding what spiritual guidance is and how we can receive it. And we're going to be focusing on what I feel like is a very divine feminine quality, although it's not about our gender or our physical bodies at all. It's the quality of receiving and nurturing. That this is part of how we experience guidance and what we do with guidance. And really, Mother's Day was kind of like the perfect doorway for me to move into this next level of exploring what it means to receive and to experience divine guidance, because mothers are those ones who are willing to be present, aren't they? To listen to what's going on. Also, to often hold a possibility for something that can't yet be seen. And as children, that's such a gift for all of us to have someone who's willing to do that for us. Mothers also had a quality to protect. There's a quality of holding something that might be fragile in the beginning, even if we don't know how fragile it is or what it's going to become. So I love this idea of focusing more deeply on the qualities of the divine feminine that encourage things like encouragement, things that our mothers gave us. Our mothers encouraged us. Sometimes it was just sitting quietly and listening. Sometimes it was a strong advice, a strong word, maybe a particular boundary that we needed at a certain time. And I really invite you, I've kind of had fun this week, but I invite you to think about some of the things that your mother said to you that really stuck in your mind. Maybe one or two words that were particularly your mom's. And when you go out and have coffee and whatever food is there, I think a lot of people are going out for lunch, but share some of those things with people in the social hall. Maybe one or two of your mother's favorite phrases. Maybe not your favorite, but your mother's. Because certainly that was part of what was going on. And another thing that I think a lot of us, and Roy's poem really pointed to this, a lot of us had parents who went through very, very difficult times. They lived through war. I mean, we're going through it now, but in a much different way, you know. Many of our fathers actually participated in the war. Some of our brothers and sisters did as well. But there's this quality of often mothers have gone through, and the mother energy has gone through some sort of challenge or hardship. And it's from that experience that the quality of being really receptive and nurturing is evolved. So I'd like to really share today a bit about Myrtle Fillmore. And I put her picture here in this book. Myrtle Fillmore, I'm going to move this one so you can see her beautifully. She was a redhead. And I never knew that. Sort of made me think she's more fiery than I originally thought, because we always saw her gray-haired because we knew about her when she was an elder. But Myrtle Fillmore, along with her husband, was a co-founder of the Unity movement. And she was a very, very interesting woman. She lived in the late 1800s. And as a young woman, it was very unusual that she would go to college. She went to Oberlin College, and she studied a ladies' literary course. So she was very interested in philosophy. She was interested in poetry. She came from a family, they were Episcopal Methodists, which happened at that time. So she had a very interesting background. She was a teacher and came from a family where there was a family, I hate to call it a tradition, but everyone said in the father's family there was this strain of tuberculosis. And everyone in the family on the father's side had inherited tuberculosis. And it was basically, in those days, it was a death sentence for people. Well, because she was really, really smart, she was very keen on the latest remedy that the doctors had to offer. In fact, her kids later talked about how she would make them drink all sorts of noxious syrups and things because she thought this was like the latest, greatest health cure. Well, Myrtle Fillmore, before she became part of the founding of Unity, met Charles Fillmore. And Charles Fillmore was a very different cat. Charles Fillmore had been basically raised kind of out in the woods. He was very familiar with the Sioux Indians, the Chippewa, did I say that? Chippewa, the Chippewa. In fact, there's a story about when Charles was a young boy, he was living with his mother, the Sioux Indian elders came and took him away for a day and brought him back later at night, and he doesn't remember what they did, but something happened. He was just kind of a real interesting guy. He worked as a grocery clerk, he worked as a driver of a mule team all over the West. He was an assayer in a mine, he was a printer's devil. And he also had a woman who was part of this printing company, the wife of the man who owned the printing company, who was very, very, she was very learned. So he was very interested. He read Emerson, he read Thoreau, he loved Shakespeare, and he loved the different religious traditions. Well, when Charles and Myrtle met, they met basically because of their interest in philosophy and poetry and ideas that were a little bit fringy compared to what was going on during the time. They ultimately married, and because of an experience that Myrtle had when she was, well, it was in 1886, the Unity movement was founded. And it's very powerful to understand what happened to Myrtle. And for me, it really demonstrates how spiritual guidance can show up in our lives. Myrtle was given a death sentence. She had 3 boys, and the doctors told her she had months to live. And basically, she and Charles had been kind of dabbling in Christian Science with Mary Baker Eddy. They both were very spiritually connected. Myrtle was very deeply connected to nature. Nature was her heartbeat, her salvation. And from her connection to nature, Myrtle understood the oneness of all life. She could see how the connections in nature were moving in and through all of us in our life. This web of life was part of what she knew to be the truth of her being. She was very devoted to God as she knew it, to that presence, that universal presence. So Myrtle and Charles went to a lecture, and she was really at the end of her rope, not knowing what to do. And she went to this lecture by a metaphysician named E.B. Weeks. He was a student of Emma Curtis Hopkins, and Emma Curtis Hopkins was in the late 1800s, one of the main teachers of what we call now New Thought, which is metaphysical understanding of the teachings that we read in any religious tradition, certainly the teachings in the Bible, especially New Testament, to see them not just as a story out there that happened one time, but metaphysically, to understand that it's an aspect of our own journey and consciousness, the journey of our soul as we grow and evolve. That's what metaphysicians are talking about. So Charles and Myrtle went to this lecture, and Myrtle, being as curious as she is, she was always looking for answers. And she came out of that lecture having one awareness in her mind. And that awareness was, I am a child of God. Therefore, I do not inherit sickness. It's not the nature of the divine universe. Sickness is not the divine nature. Life is always growing and expanding. Charles went to the same lecture. He didn't have that experience. But Myrtle had this really like a revelation for her. And I'd like to just read this one little passage. It's actually from Thomas Witherspoon's book. And it's a quote from Myrtle. She said, I was ready soil for the first teaching of this wonderful truth. I could not explain what the change that came over me was like. I only knew that God had gotten into my mind and heart to make of me what I really was in Him. I was supposed to be dying, or very close to it, of tuberculosis, a disease that was supposed to belong to my father's family. My first teacher spoke the word, one is your Father, even God. He is your heavenly heredity, and parentage. Only what belongs to God belongs to you. The truth came to me, a great revelation, showing me that I'm a child of the one whole and perfect mind, created to express the health that God is. She had such an overwhelming experience. And for me, I'd like to really kind of put an anchor in that idea, because I think for many of us, this idea of a holy interruption happens in our life. Sometimes something really will just be maybe it's an awareness that we have, that it keeps coming back to us. For Myrtle, it was that sentence, I am a child of God, therefore I do not inherit sickness. For others of us, it might be the holy interruption might be a physical ailment, it might be a disease, it might be we might have an accident, And from that accident, things will unfold and there'll be a shift and a change in us. But this idea of a holy interruption is an aspect of the receiving presence of divine guidance. Because we don't remember everything, do we? We have these dreams, and she was very connected to her dreams, as was Charles. And maybe some of you receive a dream and you remember that dream and you carry forward whatever insight or inspiration that dream brought to you. It was interesting. I was just thinking about this just in my own life, and I can remember the exact moment driving on Highway 80 in my friend's car, sitting in the back seat, heading to a class with Matthew Fox, and I had this thought, I should start a church in Berkeley. There's no unity in Berkeley. It was just a tiny little thought. But even today, that was probably maybe 93. It was a long time ago. But there was something about that kind of holy moment. It was like a sacred moment that just dropped into my life. And I received it enough to later go on to nurture that divine idea that came. And I think we all have this kind of experience in our life. And maybe some of it came from someone else that gave you an idea. And you just couldn't, it was like something going on in your ear, you couldn't stop thinking about it. So that to me is one aspect of a divine guidance. And when we talk about receiving it, it's not the same as just hearing it. We can hear it and it can come and go. But to receive it is to actually own it and to feel it and know it as a truth for us, even as we don't know how it's going to unfold. We don't know how we're going to create it. We don't even know what it's going to be. But again, that's part of that quality of the mother, isn't it? That willingness to hold the possibility, to hold that possibility of something that wants to be grown, and to nurture that possibility. So I love the story of Myrtle. And just think about it in your own life. It might have been a conversation you had with someone, or a dream that continues to come back. It could be something that happened for you when you were walking in nature and you just had that still moment of a divine inspiration. The other piece of it that's so interesting, it will often be something that contradicts conventional wisdom. Now think about Myrtle. What was conventional wisdom? Oh, your father's family, everybody in the family dies of tuberculosis. You've got it. P.S. You're dead, right? That whole idea that life lives in a linear kind of way. And often when we get an inspiration or we get a guidance about something, don't we often go, oh, no, not me, I'm too old, I don't have the money, I don't know how. We come up with all these reasons. Or the collective is going in one direction and we've got an idea to go in another. That was certainly what Myrtle was. Myrtle, the world told Myrtle, you're doomed. You're doomed to sickness. And Myrtle said, no, you belong to life. You're part of life. And what did she do? Myrtle nurtured her awareness that she inherited the grace and the presence of life flowing through her body. She started speaking to the health and vitality of all the organs in her body. She took the time every day. She would go sit in her office for hours, it's told, and she would go through all her body and bless her body and speak to the power and the strength of the organs in her body. She went on to live for another 40 years. She died in her mid-80s, and she didn't die because her body had fallen apart. She died, she told her fellow workers, I think it's time. I think I can do my work better from the other side. She had a ministry of writing letters, hundreds and thousands of letters to people. In that time, they didn't have the internet, but that was how Myrtle, that was her ministry, healing healing people. And she told her coworkers, I think it's time for me. And she went home, and 3 weeks later, she was gone. And certainly her work is she was very right on that one. Very, very right on that one. I think one of the other pieces about this idea of receiving, and also especially with Myrtle, was this idea of how connected she was to nature. She thought of the process of healing was much more like gardening than engineering. Very different, not this kind of linear path to things. It was about putting something in the ground, even not knowing how it's going to unfold, and doing what is necessary to nourish it, to feed it, to give it what it needs. She did that for herself. And ultimately, she was part of creating something much bigger than herself. And this is where I think it's so powerful for us to really honor the wisdom that comes in as divine guidance, especially those things that keep coming back to us. Maybe some of you here are people who are often finding synchronicities in your life. Anybody here really noticing that you're finding synchronicities? Yeah. It's that awareness. Oh, there it is again. Maybe it's the 111, and you look at your phone and it's 111, or it's a certain color that shows up, or it's a word, or it's somebody calls you when you're thinking about them. But being aware of these things, and really once we bring awareness and attention to it, that's part of receiving and nourishing what it is that wants to be born and really grow in us. It's also very true that this process that Myrtle was going through, and that I think all of us do when we're really receiving guidance and nourishing it, it's very different than how the world tells us to create something. The world wants us to control it. We want to fix it. We want to line it up. We want to push. We have a deadline. We have to get done by then. Well, we know about babies. They come when they're going to come, right? And the same thing is true when we have this kind of divine guidance and we're called to receive an idea and to nurture that idea. And certainly that's something that healing in the physical body, and a lot of times we're dealing with healing in the physical body, but also healing can be about our relationships, could be about reconnecting with people in our life that we love, or even more deeply reconnecting with the truth of who we are, the beautiful presence that each one of us is, and what it is we've come here to be and to know and to do in the world. And for Myrtle, that was a bigger vision than I think she ever could have imagined when she heard, "You are a child of God. You are a child of God, and you do not inherit sickness." She had no idea that she was going to be part of a movement, and you and I would be sitting here today, that multiple people would have written books about her life. It's powerful. It's powerful. This is the mother. This is the divine feminine. And it's not the divine feminine in this body, it's in Roy's body. You feel that energy in the body of my beloved, the divine feminine that's holding space, receiving, and then nurturing it. And ultimately, we're called to give it in the world. We're called to be and to share, and that's what Myrtle did. It's really sacred work. It's really, really sacred work. So today, we get to honor our mothers, our earth mothers, but it's not just our mothers. Think about it. It's the people that received us, that nurtured us. Maybe it was a teacher. I remember my daughter Elizabeth's here, and I remember she had a kindergarten teacher. I never will forget her, Mrs. Paddock. She had a thing with the kids. They'd get a great big piece of paper and they'd draw something, and then the kid would go, "Oh, I don't like it. It's not exactly what I wanted." Mrs. Paddock would say, "You get a fresh start." She would give him another piece of paper. Hello, what a great idea. You know, I mean, a lot of people would have, now, we gave you that paper, that's your paper, you get one paper. If you don't like it, we're really sorry.
That's it.
Right? That's it for you. No soup for you. But Mrs. Paddock knew that that's not how you deal with little children. You get a fresh start. If you don't like it, there's another piece of paper. You could try something else. Yay, Mrs. Paddock. But it's people like that. You know, we have teachers, or we have a friend, or we have Alan was telling me, his grandmother, how much she read the Daily Word to him, and then his mother, of course, with all the kids and grandkids. So it's not, the divine feminine is really an aspect of all of us. And I just want to just invite you to think for a moment, who was that first one who taught you how to listen to life? Listen to life, right? Life, like maybe out in nature, maybe it was just the experience of exuberance playing. Somebody taught you that, you know, somebody held that space for you and nurtured that experience for you of being present to what is alive in the world. And somebody spoke possibility to you, said, hey, you can do this, I know you can do it. And a lot of us have people like that in our life right now, you know, or we hope we have people like that in our life right now. So, and if you don't, give me a call, because I love to be. I was a cheerleader in high school, so I'm really good. And there was probably somebody who was just there to calm your fears, you know, to just be a presence, right? That's the divine feminine, holding the space, nurturing, so powerful. So the universe, spirit, God, however you define this amazing energy we call life, it's always connecting. It's always, I hesitate to use speaking because a lot of it, us get the image without a word at all. It's just like it groks in. We know this is something I'm supposed to pay attention to, right? We get it in our dreams. We might get it walking in nature. We might get it watching something on YouTube. It's just going to come in. We might get it in prayer, in the stillness, or in the middle of a huge crowd. But it's ours. And it's ours to receive, and it's ours to nourish, and to bring awareness and let it grow and see where it's going to go. Maybe you won't end up starting a movement, you know, but you might just change somebody's day, make them feel better. You know, you might make a difference for one person. You might take care of an animal. You know, there's so many ways that we can show up and nurture lives. So really just being invited to trust that deeper presence that's coming. That's what I really want to invite for all of us to do. And to remember that we don't belong to any sense of limitation. We belong to life, which is always expanding, always growing. It's the nature of love. And where did we come from? We came from love. We live in love. So let's take a little time now. I'm going to have you turn out the lights. We're going to do a short meditation. And then I'm going to have the ensemble come and sort of sing us out, which will be a lovely way to close our meditation today. So just invite you to maybe take things off your lap.
I thought I could do my love to the...
No.
Okay.
No. So just invite you to close your eyes if you're comfortable with that, or just make a soft gaze with your eyes. Just quieting the mind. Gently take a few breaths, feeling into the body. Powerful life force moving through us in the body. And just allowing yourself to become more still. Our friend Myrtle Fillmore heard the truth that changed her life. I am a child of God. She heard, I am a child of God. And she held that truth. She nurtured that truth. She spoke into that truth until it literally blossomed and changed her life. So today, I invite you to tune in, just listening gently within what truth may be asking for your attention right now. Is there an inner knowing that you may have dismissed or somehow delayed or even discarded because of doubt? What part of your life may be asking you not to push so hard, not to force, but to just hold and lovingly nurture? So take a moment and just imagine placing that question, that desire, that thought, that becoming into the hands of the divine love, the holy place, that place of the divine feminine held as possibility. Simply receiving, no controlling, no striving. Just trusting that Spirit is already at work in you. And in the silence, just holding yourself to receive this divine guidance.
Breath. The breath of God is breathing me and resting in the breath of God. I know that all is well. The breath of God is breathing me and resting in the breath of God. I know that all is well. The grace of God is grace in me and resting in the grace of God. I know that all is well. The grace of God is grace in me and resting in the grace of God. I know that all is well. The joy of God is joy in me and resting in the joy of God. I know that all is well. The joy of God is joy in me and resting in the joy of God. I know that all is well. is love in me, and resting in the love of God, we know that all is well. The love of God is breathing me, and resting in the love of God, I know that all is well. The breath of God is breathing me, and resting in the breath of God, I know that all is well. The breath of God is breathing me, and resting in the breath of God, I know that all is well. I know that all is well. I know that all is well.